Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. Haven't done a live in a while. We're back at it again. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Hope you're feeling good and ready to get into some boxing talk. There's quite a bit to discuss here. The main topic will be Frank Warren's upcoming schedule, which is quite impressive, or at least very solid. But there's some other boxing stories on the agenda as well. Before we get to that though, I do want to big up Mr. Luca early for the super chat. He says, it's a shame about Usyk, it truly is. I agree. Although, saying that he's going to fight the winner of Wardley Dubois after this silly fight against Rico is a little bit more encouraging. So he's not gone full out Partridge, all right? He hasn't gone all out Partridge. But obviously there's a concern if Daniel Dubois beats Wardley, nobody wants to see an Usyk-Dubois trilogy. But if Wardley wins, Usyk fighting Wardley is not a bad fight at all. And of course it would be undisputed again. However, what we want to see ahead of a Wardley fight right now is Usyk defend against Caballel, and Frank Warren, for the first time as far as I've seen, is really pushing it now. Not sure how many of you guys have seen the interviews he's done today with various boxing outlets. He's really pushing the Caballel fight, and he's saying after Usyk is done with Rico, he needs to fight Caballel next, and we're going to be applying a lot of pressure. Well, yeah, long overdue. They need to apply that pressure, and if Usyk don't fight him, he needs to be stripped. We'll maybe get into that a bit more later on. Big up Mr. Luca for the super chat. Also, big up Matt Borgerson for his super chat. He says, I've been hearing rumors that Conor Benn is being moved to fight Ilia Topuria. Is that how you pronounce his name? For the middleweight Zuffa title in 2027. Not even joking. So I looked this guy up. He is a Georgian MMA fighter based in Spain. I think he was born in Germany, but he's of Georgian descent. He's now based in Spain. He's never had a professional boxing match. Him being put in there against Conor Benn for the vacant Zuffa middleweight title, nothing would shock me at this point, but it would be an absurd move by Zuffa. That's not the type of boxing that's going to sell people on the Zuffa belt, is it? Putting Conor Benn in there, who's never fought at world level in boxing against a recognizable name, then being put for the middleweight title against an MMA fighter who's never had a boxing match. Yeah, that's not going to give the Zuffa belt credibility, so we'll see. But that is what Matt Borgerson, big up Matt Borgerson, is hearing on the grapevine. Shout out to KD versus the world. Shout out to Wart. Shout out to EJ. Shout out to President Brush. Big up, big up. We got Hurt Gate. Ryan Watterson says Bricktop's face in the thumbnail. LOL. Big up David Fisher. We got She in the place. Chrissy G. Martin Colton. NHYT. Who else we got in here? We got Home Wrecking Knee Knocker. Okay, interesting name. Rem, FIFA, Fernie G, Mark, Barry White. Khan in the place, Jake Jones, big up. Yeah, they don't call him Bricktop for nothing. Shout out to Martin Colton. We've only just started the stream, so you haven't missed anything. Yeah, big up President Brush. If we could all hit that like button, it'd be much appreciated. Really helps these streams get seen. Visibility and the algorithm and whatnot. Big up Emmanuel. Big up Atavistic Intellect. Trolls are bad. Dr. Wu. Big up, big up. KO Talk. How you feeling out there? Just to give you guys some useless trivia about myself at a minute. I was having a nice day. I grilled some steaks on the barbecue. And amidst all, in fact, rewind. Woke up this morning, went for a little 3-mile jog. That's my routine at the moment. I've got into this routine of jogging in the morning, and I want to stick to it. I got a few pounds to lose. Came back to the house, went in the backyard, started grilling some steaks, went to go sit by the pool, stubbed my toe something horrible on the steps. My toe is now swollen up like a damn blimp. And there was me trying to keep this morning routine of going for a jog. It's only like, 3-4 mile jog. But I was enjoying that routine in the warm weather. The weight just melts off. But now I've stubbed my toe. I feel like David Hay in the Klitschko fight. So, anyway. Enough of that. Let's get on to some serious matters. Shout out to Nathaniel. Before we talk about Bricktop and his schedule, a Bricktop fighter who there's a lot of speculation about at the minute is Hamza Shiraz. Some people are claiming that Shiraz will potentially be signing to Zuffa. Have any of you guys heard this rumor? I've got no idea whether it's true, but there's certainly talk about that on the grapevine. However, Edgar Berlanga has come out and insinuated that Shiraz cheated. He called him a bum, obviously in relation to the fight they had some time ago, where Berlanga got wrapped up like a, I can't even describe it. He got twisted up like a pretzel. Let's put it that way. Berlanga got handled. He got tucked in. And he's never been the sharpest knife in the drawer. He's always been intellectually challenged, this young man. And you would expect, therefore, that he would react in such a way to getting dealt with by Hamza Shiraz. Claims that Shiraz had suspicious hand wraps. Okay, show us some proof. Show us some evidence. You're out here insinuating that he cheated, calling him a bum. Show us some proof. I remember there was some type of controversy after that fight. But again, no proof was shown. And I do want to clarify something because this came up, I think, in a recent UK show. I forget which fight it was for. The opposing corner doesn't get the right to oversee the opponent having his hands wrapped. That is a professional courtesy in boxing. It's not part of the rules and something you must do. You can refuse a member of the opposing team, a representative of the opponent, to be in your dressing room watching you get your hands wrapped. Obviously, America has got 50 states. There are different rules by each state, but certainly in the UK and in several states in America, that's how it is. It's a professional courtesy. It isn't a legal requirement, all right? Because the commission has their guys in the changing room. So the commission are the ones who are there to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on with the wraps and whatnot. So I do just want to put that out there. But anyway, whatever it's worth, Hamza Shiraz being called a bum by Edgar Berlanga. There was even some rumor of Eubank Jr. maybe fighting Berlanga in a crossroads between the pair of them. Make it out what you will. What do you guys think of this? John says, stubbing one's toe is no joke. It really ain't a joke. My toe is like a damn blimp at this point. It's swollen up so big. Horrible. Shout out to Nathaniel. He's tuning in from Dubai. I hope you're keeping safe out there, bro. With all that's going on, it's very unfortunate. The orange man lost his damn mind. Shook up a hornet's nest. Dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. I'll talk about that on Patreon. I did part 1 last week. I'll be doing part 2 later on this week. JR says, does anyone buy the theory of Bricktop freezing Usyk out? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Somebody brought that up the other day in a previous stream. And I hadn't really thought about it before, I'll be honest. It's an interesting possibility. And if that is what's going on, then obviously Usyk can be forgiven, because at the Ring Magazine Awards, Usyk, I don't want to say gate crashed, but he was invited in to a Fabio Wardley interview. And during that interview, he basically said he wanted to fight Wardley, but the reason the fight between them didn't happen is because of Wardley's management. Make of that what you will. Now, Frank Warren isn't Wardley's manager, he's his promoter. But Usyk doesn't have the greatest English. Maybe that's what he meant. I don't know. We can only speculate. But yeah, I've come across that claim, and it's an interesting one. It's something we should consider. Shout out to Matt Borgerson for the super chat. Says, Berlanga stinks, though. You know, Berlanga is a similar personality type, in some ways at least, to Deontay Wilder, in that he's a very, very unintelligent person, but he has a lot of natural self-confidence. And when you combine that, when you combine very, very low intelligence with very, very high confidence, this is what you get. You get him coming out saying some wacky things, making unsubstantiated claims, so on and so forth. But yeah, Berlanga, he's a brave guy, but very foolish. So moving on from Edgar Berlanga, any of you guys heard about this? Sources. Torres' title eliminator against Sanchez off. Frank Sanchez has injured his knee. Now, unfortunately, this knee problem for Frank Sanchez appears to be chronic. And I don't know whether it can actually be resolved. He's supposedly like 33 or 34 years of age. I question that, as I've questioned the true age of several Cuban fighters over the years. At the end of the day, these guys defect from Cuba. Do they have any papers? Or do they just make up a date of birth once they reach the United States? I suspect it's the latter, at least for some of them. So I'm skeptical about his stated age. I suspect he's a lot older than that. And here he has this chronic knee issue. Frank Sanchez has been seen in fights wearing knee braces or knee supports for years now. Not in every fight, but even prior to his loss to Ajit Kabayel, there were some fights where you'd see him wear knee supports. And then obviously in the Kabayel fight, it was plain for everyone to see that his legs weren't right. This is a guy who was primarily a mover. This is a guy who, against Efe Ajagba, for example, used movement as the main part of his game. So you take the main part of his game away, and what you're left with is a very limited heavyweight. He can still punch, he's still got fast hands, but his legs were his defense to a large extent. He's not a guy that has a real tight guard or shoulder rolls particularly well or well enough to use it as a primary form of defense without his legs. So you take Frank Sanchez's legs away, and he's a sitting duck, really, isn't he? That's what we saw in the Kabayel fight. So he's pulled out of this Torres final eliminator, Richard Torres, with those knees again. Can this be fixed? Can it be mended? I am not too hopeful for Frank Sanchez, to be honest. What do you guys think? Rem says Sanchez has finished at top level. That's right, Martin. He's had knee problems in the past. Yeah, Sanchez had a lot of potential, but this chronic knee issue doesn't seem to be going away, does it? And I've actually done a prediction for this fight. I'm not sure if I did a dedicated video, but I certainly made a prediction in a couple of previous streams. I'm leaning towards Richard Torres to win. And one of the main reasons for me picking Richard Torres, look, I'm aware of his limitations. To me, he appears to be quite chinny. He's a bit ragged in his technique. But one of the reasons I'm picking Torres is because I don't trust those Frank Sanchez knees. And he's very low volume, Frank Sanchez. Go back and watch his fight against Junior Farr. It was frustrating how few punches he was throwing. So I'm actually leaning towards Torres. And I was even before this pullout. Yeah, Sanchez has got the power if he can land a shot. But to me, it appears as though Sanchez's body has been breaking down for several years now. And Richard Torres has plenty of energy. He's got the youth. Okay. And Cozy says, arthritis starting to kick in for the old man. Big up Rich Franklin. Yeah, let's hit that like button, folks. Let's get them likes up. Much appreciated. Thank you in advance. Nathaniel says, I was in the club the other day and these Cuban brasses started fighting. I swear one of them was slipping and catching shots like a pro. They're all raised in the gym over there. You know, speaking of fighting, I saw some woman's fight, a clip of some woman's fight the other day. The daughter of one of the members of Salt and Pepper. And who's her dad? I think her name's Egypt, but she's the daughter of Salt and Pepper and some other public figure. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? Who the dad is? Big up Team Batman Boxing. Oh, wow, is it Tretch? So that's the daughter of Tretch from Naughty by Nature and one of the members of Salt and Pepper. She got weighed in. She got knocked the hell out. That was ugly. That was ugly. Apparently she'd never had a boxing match before and she went up against somebody that was like seasoned. So whoever the matchmaker was, they did her dirty. Okay, Home Wrecker says, stubbing the toe is a convenient way to get out of the morning jogs, Hatman. Reminiscent of Wilder and Belanga blaming the opponent's hand wraps for their utter destructions. We need to see MRI receipts. If only that was the case. I wish it was. I wish I didn't have this damn blimp of a big toe. It's killing me even now. Absolutely killing me. I'm like David A over here. King James says, Ann Wolfe is the only female boxer I've ever watched and thought, damn, she can fight. Shields is not the GOAT. She would get knocked out by Wolfe. Well, for me, it's Christy Martin. Christy Martin, back in the 90s, she had real nice technique and she could bang. Yeah, later on, she fought Layla Ali when she was past it and Layla Ali was way bigger and stuff like that. But when Christy Martin was in her prime fighting girls her own size, she was putting people to sleep. And the technique was good. It wasn't like no Katie Taylor business. It was like real good, solid technique, the way she would throw her shots and all that. So I'd say Christy Martin. There was also some Latina that I saw. I mean, it was a horrible mismatch. I don't know the name of this Latina lady, but Latina, anyway, that denotes that she's female. I can't remember the name of this Latina, but she fought some other girl who literally looked like she took up boxing yesterday. And the fight was over in about 15 seconds. She came out and she threw this blisteringly fast combination, and the other girl was like out cold. God, the mismatches in female boxing are crazy. I mean, way beyond what we see in male boxing because the talent pool is so small. So some crazy, dangerous mismatches in female boxing. Strangingness says, what if Eddie and Dana engineered a fake beef? Yeah, I spoke about that in the video I uploaded earlier on today. It's very possible, isn't it? TKO own WWE. They're now part of Zuffa. Maybe they're looking to bring some WWE scripted beefs into boxing. Not that boxing has never had scripted beefs before, but maybe they're upping the ante. Maybe they're going to introduce a new level of scripted beef, which is so over the top that it appears real. No, surely something this theatric can't be scripted. Do you know what I mean? So I'm open to the possibility. Big up Matt Borgerson for the super chat. He says, do you think you could share an elevator with Gareth Davis and Joey Spencer for more than a 5-minute span? They both look smelly as hell. To be fair, I don't think Gareth A. Davis smells necessarily bad. I've never met the guy, never been around the guy. I just think, like other people have said, he smells like Old Spice. Although, when he's been on a few flights and he's rushing to connect from one flight to the next, and you end up sitting next to him in an airport lounge or something, he might smell a little bit. Possibly. But big up Matt for the super chat. Always taking shots at the Gad, Gareth A. Davis. That's the one. Yes, Team Batman Boxing. The one had mum shorts on. That girl with mum shorts. She looked like she literally took up boxing yesterday. And she got in with some Latina who had blistering fast hands and she got knocked out cold in about 10 seconds. That's crazy. Somebody's saying her name is Estrada. Is that her name? That was such a dangerous mismatch. Shocking. Shout out to Mark Sterling. Says Tretch made a statement saying he's not happy with her hobby for setting her up into a mismatch. Oh, wow. Brittany says it was actually over in 5 seconds. I remember it was very short. It was crazy, bro. That was such a crazy, dangerous mismatch. AJ says, yeah, the soccer mom. Yeah, calling her a soccer mom. That's what she looked like. JR says, leather to the left of me and droop to the right. Old Spice. Brute and Old Spice. That's what Gareth A. Davis smells like. Shout out to Mr. Classic Metal. The Shields has been babbling about fighting men for years now. Recently, Shannon Sharp made her look stupid during an interview and she played dumb. You know, Clarissa Shields is obviously a very good female fighter. But she has a massive chip on her shoulder. And I do wonder, just to play devil's advocate for a moment, I do wonder whether this chip that Clarissa Shields has on her shoulder is because of what happened to her as a child. Okay? When she was very young, I think maybe a teenager, she was violated. And maybe what we see from Clarissa Shields talking about fighting men is her trying to conquer her demons, because many years ago, a man overpowered her and she couldn't do anything about it. Do you know what I mean? So that might be where all this is coming from. But either way, it's ill-conceived, isn't it? Because the only time, at least on camera, that a man has been in the ring with her and not held back, she got flattened. Do you know what I mean? That random sparring partner of hers who didn't, because you look at the sparring of Clarissa Shields against men and it's very clear they're holding back. It's like anyone that knows anything about boxing can clearly see those guys are holding back when they're sparring her. But that one guy who didn't hold back for that split second, she was laid out. So, you know, Clarissa Shields does what she does, and she's what she is. It's I understand why it irritates people, but I don't really pay her that much attention, to be honest, when she starts talking all that stuff. Women aren't allowed to fight men for good reason in combat sports. Big up Mr. Classic Metal. All right, so we'll move on from Torres to the main topic of this stream. We've spoken about Frank Sanchez. This is the main topic right here. Frank Warren has done a bunch of interviews today, and he's come out swinging whenever asked about the situation with Turki Al-Sheikh, Dana White, Zuffa Boxing, etc. And he's pointed out that he's got a very strong schedule. He's not concerned about what Zuffa are doing. Well, he actually is concerned. That's why he's threatening to sue, or at least sue Seller and TKO. So he is concerned about what they're doing, or at least he alleges, apparently, that he's supposed to be part of what's going on over there, and he's not. So therefore, I want $1 billion. But he is trying to concentrate on his own business to some extent, putting out quality content, putting on good shows. And I have to admit, folks, this is a pretty solid schedule. If you guys looked at this, this is Frank Warren's BoxRec page, obviously, his promoter BoxRec page. Yes, promoters have BoxRec pages. So do referees, so do judges. You can look up all of those. I'm not sure about managers actually, but certainly promoters. I've got BoxRec pages. You can look up their events and whatnot. So it all kicks off this weekend, as far as Queensbury's upcoming schedule, with the Jazza Dickens Anthony Kakachi show over there in Ireland, and it's a solid card. Now, for international boxing fans, maybe from the States and other parts of the world, they're not going to know most of these fighters. But if you're from the British Isles, then you will know quite a few of them. And there's some good matchups here. The Jazza Dickens Kakachi matchup seems decent. You got Maxie Hughes on there, etc. So that's the first of this run that Frank Warren's on. That's coming up this weekend, March 14. Then on March 28, back end of this month, we've got the Italma Franklin card. Now, Italma Franklin isn't necessarily the strongest fight in the world, but we're all intrigued to see how Italma is progressing, especially since he's been out the ring for a long time. There's a stop-start nature to his career of late, which is a bit concerning. So we want to see if he's still progressing at the same rate, whether this is hampering his progress in any way, against a very tough guy in Jermaine Franklin, who's never been stopped, never been down, I don't think. Also on the card, we got Willie Hutchinson against Ezra Taylor. That's an interesting fight. Shaquille Thompson versus Brad Pauls. Various other matchups on the card that are decent. Adam Hamid on there. We don't much care about that. But yeah. Who else is on there? Liam Davis. So on and so forth. So that's a card that people will want to watch, particularly for Italma. I'm not saying these are super incredible early Riyadh season level cards at all, but they're solid. Then on April 4th, we've got the Deontay Wilder-Derek Chisora fight. Now, this isn't strictly a Queensbury show because the Sauerlands and Misfits and whatnot are involved, but Queensbury are certainly co-promoters on the event. Deontay Wilder versus Derek Chisora top of the bill. Vidal Riley versus Masternak on the undercard. That's a decent-ish fight. You got Denzel Bentley fighting on the undercard. He's usually good value for money. Matty Harris versus Franklin Ignatius. That's an interesting fight. And yeah, a few other guys on there as well. So that's April 4th. Then, Again, these are all Queensberry shows, folks. April 17th. This show, well, I don't really have any interest in it, personally. Royston, Barney Smith, and Nathaniel Collins and all that. I'll probably skip that show. Maybe some of you guys like it for whatever reason, and that's fine. But that's, April 17th, not April 25th. That's April 17th. Then on April 25th, there is the Lawrence Okolie, Tony Yoka show. Now, obviously, they've still got to flesh out the undercard. They'll be putting that together. At the moment, there's only 2 fights on there. But I'm intrigued by the main event. I think Okolie versus Yoka is an interesting fight. And I've given my thoughts in previous videos, and I've done a prediction on that. So, yeah, that's April 25th. That's in France. So Frank Warren is now officially international. Eddie Hearn, for the longest time, was telling us how he's the only international promoter. Well, not anymore. All right? Frank Warren, despite falling out with Turkey, he's doing shows overseas now as well. And it's not the first time. He obviously did Kabiel's last fight in Germany, didn't he? And there was a very good turnout for that. So, yeah, Eddie Hearn no longer has that distinction of being the only major promoter who is international. Now Bricktop is international too. And then finally on this particular run, and there are going to be more Queensberry shows to come, but this is what's scheduled for now. This takes us up to May 9th. The big one, don't blink, Fabio Wardley versus Daniel Dubois, WBO heavyweight world title. So yeah, what do you guys think of this run for Bricktop? He's not laying down. He's not being bent over a barrel. Pause. Despite this apparent beef with Turki Al-Sheikh, he's going ahead and putting cards on. And there's some good fights in there. So, credit to Bricktop. Look, I've criticized him over the years. The way he's treated many fighters, in my opinion, as an outsider looking in, has been less than great. Let's just put it that way. But I've always said about Bricktop, he is a fierce competitor. Nobody can ever take that away from him. This is not a guy who, when the going gets tough, he's going to pack up his tent and go home. Right? Bricktop ain't like that. This is a guy who has an awful lot of fire in him. Even at his age now, in his 70s, he's still a very fiery character. I think he had a heart issue recently. Didn't he have heart surgery or something not too long ago? But that can't keep the guy down. So there you go, Bricktop. Despite issues with Turkey, he's acting like, you know what? We don't even need Turkey. We're going to put good shows on regardless. And one of the smartest things that he's done over the past few years is signing up all this heavyweight talent, because heavyweight talent will net you more money generally than signing up fighters from the lower weight classes. So he's done very, very well there to sign up all the heavyweight talent. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Just going to catch up with some of your comments here. Okay, I'm not sure whether Test is trolling or he's being serious. I hope he's trolling. Mr. Lucas says, Bricktop says he's going to announce another show in Germany this week. Is that right? Bricktop will not be denied. Despite beef with Turkey, he's not allowing that to hold him back. He's not relying on that money. He's doubling down. JR says Luke Partridge is in the chat. Luca says, and he said it was a heavyweight card. The Germany one. Yeah, if it is Caballel, against who? Maybe it's just to stay busy. Because Caballel looked a little... Look, Caballel's never been a body beautiful heavyweight, but he did look a little sloppy in his last fight. So maybe they are looking to sharpen him up a little bit in another stay busy against the miscellaneous opponent. Someone says old school mentality. Yeah, Bricktop's definitely got that, but the old school way was to keep fighters active while they wait for their title shots, rather than just sitting around collecting dust on a shelf. Get out, even if it's against low-key opposition. Or low-tier opposition, should I say. Mr. Lucas says Joe Joyce maybe. Possibly, but I don't think it'll be anything that taxing, to be honest. I think they'll be looking for something similar to his last opponent. Someone more miscellaneous than Joe Joyce. Because think about it. They put him in against a fighter who nobody's ever heard of, and it sold out that arena easy. Could have sold more. So they don't necessarily need a Joe Joyce. Do you know what I mean? If they're just looking to keep him busy. Chris Lee says, everyone was like, yeah, the Saudis are great for boxing. But the Saudis have been great for boxing. There was loads of fights that got made, which wouldn't have got made had the Saudis not been involved. There were loads of these stacked cards. They have been great for boxing, but, you know, I always try to remind people that boxing is always in a state of flux. There's never any stability. So you just got to get it while the getting is good. When PBC first came into boxing, they were good for it, but they eventually turned bad for it. When DAZN first came into boxing, they were good for it, but they eventually turned bad. That's just the way things go in boxing. But you enjoy the good times while, as long as they last, basically. Because people were saying that at the time when the Saudis came in. Yeah, but do you think they're really gonna always be putting on these kind of cards? And my response was always the same. Enjoy it while it's good. If it turns bad in future, that's boxing. It's always in a state of flux. Just learn to enjoy the good times when they're here. Yeah, I agree, Kylie. I'm looking forward to seeing Atama active again. Hopefully they can get him more active than he has been. None of this pay-per-view nonsense. He's far too early in his career to be putting him on pay-per-view. Especially against washed-up fighters. Chris Lee says Frank is basically the one, he's Neo. I don't know about that. Frank Warren has done plenty of, questionable things in the sport of boxing over the years. And bear in mind, Frank Warren doesn't have an issue with the Saudis because of any ethical concerns. If you read the reports about the proposed lawsuit, he's threatening to sue because he basically isn't going to be part of this whole Zuffa thing. So it's not like he's coming in on some moral crusade. No. That's not what this is. He wanted to be part of it, allegedly, according to the reports. And that's why he's upset, because he's been cut out of it. We got Mr. Classic Metal. He says, don't understand why Hearn didn't invest aggressively in more heavyweights like Warren. Via AJ, he knows firsthand how very lucrative it can be. Yeah, and my best attempt to explain it is to say that Hearn is kind of like Chelsea used to be in football, or soccer, as Americans call it, back in the days. They would allow clubs like Arsenal to actually build the talent from the ground up. Arsene Wenger was a great talent spotter, or his scouts were great at talent spotting. And Arsenal back then were one of the few clubs in the Premiership that were actually running at a profit, like consistently at a profit. Arsene Wenger ran that club like a business, you know? He would spot this really good talent, he'd develop the talent, and then he'd sell them. And that would make the club money. It wouldn't bring the club success, but it would make them money. And you could look at maybe Bricktop, like Arsene Wenger back in the days. Not that he's as efficient financially, but in terms of the way he develops talent, he spots talent from young, he develops them, builds them up. And Eddie Hearn is like the old school Chelsea, who would just come in and buy up the talent which is already developed. So that's my best way of explaining why Eddie Hearn hasn't signed up all these heavyweights. He wants a finished product commercially, more so than boxing-wise, ability-wise. I mean, he wants that too, but commercially, he wants a guy that can immediately start making him money. He's not as willing as Warren is to invest over the long haul, because it's a risk. And the Hearns just have a different kind of business philosophy. They don't like all that risk. And to be fair, the Hearns have made loads of money, you know? Mr. Lucas says, you're British, don't say soccer. Well, I guess you didn't hear when I said, or soccer as you call it in the States. We do have some American viewers. They might be confused if I don't also mention soccer rather than just calling it football. America is a very insular society. If you just talk about football, they will assume you're, in some cases, talking about gridiron. So I mentioned both football and soccer. Ryan Emus says, Jared Anderson is popping back up. I think him versus David Adelaide would be a good fight. How do you see that one going? Yeah, that's a good shout. Anderson versus Adelaide, that's a good shout. I would lean towards Anderson if he's actually on form, because he throws a hell of a lot of punches. I think Adelaide's got a better chin, and I think he's more mentally robust than Anderson, who's a bit of a Ryan Garcia, isn't he? A bit fragile mentally. But when Anderson's on form, he's got a tremendous work rate, great engine. But that is something which can easily leave you if you don't keep that engine tuned up. You know, I've often spoken in the past about how when you're a teenager, when you're a child going into your teenage years, you've got this youthful energy. And if you don't maintain that youthful energy, if you allow yourself to become lethargic and lazy and out of shape and all that kind of stuff, once you lose that youthful energy, you never get it back. It's gone for good. And Anderson had that. He clearly had that youthful energy where he was able to throw crazy amount of punches and not get tired and all that kind of thing. But he's been so traumatized by that loss to Martin Bakole. Man's gone missing with a load of money, obviously. I wonder whether he's still working as hard as he used to in the gym. His comeback fight was very, very underwhelming, to say the least. So I wonder whether he's still going to have that same engine again. If he does have that same engine, then yeah, I would favor him over Adelaide to maybe win on points. A big up Mr. Classic Metal. He says, Hearn did sign AJ right from the start, though. Yes, he did. But that was at a different time in Matchroom's history. And also, he recognized he was going to be able to make money out of him immediately. Bear in mind, and Eddie Hearn admitted this, AJ received bigger offers from other promoters, including Frank Warren, than he received from Matchroom. Think about that. Frank Warren offered Anthony Joshua more money than Eddie Hearn did to sign. But Anthony Joshua went with Hearn. Obviously, back then, Warren was on Box Nation, so it didn't look particularly attractive. But Olympic gold medalist, you could see the image with AJ. It was obvious the way you would market someone like that. It would be relatively easy. And with the relatively small age gap between Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua compared to, let's say, Anthony Joshua and Frank Warren or other promoters, they could develop some kind of, rapport between them, which they could sell to the public too. And indeed, you look at the way Anthony Joshua was moved. I mean, he was headlining quite early on in his career. And for me, he was rushed. And that is an example of the way that Matchroom think. They don't want to wait years and years investing money in you, losing money on shows. They don't want to do that. They want someone who they can make money off immediately. And that was the case with AJ. His pro debut against Emanuele Leo, I think it wasn't an undercard, but look at the crowd reaction. Look how many people actually bought tickets to watch Anthony Joshua. So, yeah, that's the Matchroom mentality. They want to make money off you immediately. They're not looking to do all this long-term building, losing loads of money on you only for you to sign with someone else or only for you to lose and, before they've made any money off you. Big up Mr. Classic Metal. I agree with Dr. Wu. Warren would have matched AJ better. Yeah, from a career development perspective, I think Warren would have matched AJ better. I think it would have taken him a bit slower. But AJ, at least in the short term, probably wouldn't have made as much money. In fact, maybe even in the long term. Because Eddie Hearn understood the way that, well, how can I describe it? For one, Eddie Hearn understood social media, which Frank Warren didn't understand, and he utilized it to good effect. Eddie Hearn made himself accessible to the public in a way that Frank Warren never did, or never used to. Eddie Hearn would be talking to people on Twitter and engaging with the fans, all this kind of thing. And that all helped build Anthony Joshua's brand. Yeah, Matchroom and Joshua were building their brands together. It was young, it was fresh. They were bringing in a different demographic with AJ into the boxing space. It wasn't just the grizzled old hardcores like us. They were bringing in the trendy young people, women, and all that kind of thing. I'm not sure whether Frank Warren would have been so effective at doing that. Do you know what I mean? But from a boxing perspective, yeah, I think he would have developed AJ a bit better. Sports fan says David Adeleye needs to change trainer and become a front foot counter pressure fighter. I think that's his route to world level. He has the power and reflexes and body composition for it. Okay, that's an interesting take. King James says Frank suing IFL was peak boomer, not understanding the changing society. He actually threatened to sue Ade Oladipo back in the days. When Ade Oladipo had his channel with Ryan, Box Talk, they received a letter from Frank Warren back in the days. Yeah, peak boomer. Like, calm down. Man's out here threatening YouTubers. Shout out to everybody in the live chat. Rem says, didn't Don Charles message you back in the days? Yeah, he did. Basically, I, in one video, gave my opinion that he didn't care so much about Frank Buglioni as he did making money out of him. Words to that effect. It's a very, very long time ago now. And Don Charles took exception to it and started spamming my inbox with message requests. I didn't actually see any messages from him because the way I had my Facebook set up, we had to be friends before you could message me. He kept spamming me with requests. And EJ, shout out to EJ, Errol Jarrett, he even messaged me because he was a Facebook friend of mine. He even messaged me, says, yeah, Don wants to talk to you. AJ says Bricktop's the type of guy to send legal letters to family members after a Christmas Day bust up. Yeah, Frank the Rit. But he's outdone himself this time, hasn't he? Threatening to sue for $1 billion. I never thought I'd see that day. Would I ever work for a broadcaster the same way Addy and others do? I have no desire to do that whatsoever. I do get that question from time to time. No desire to do that at all. I enjoy my freedom. I do not like working for people. Even if they're paying me more money, I don't like working. I just don't like it. I don't like working for people. I like doing things on my own time and of my own volition. Big up Mr. Classic Metal. He says, Frank Warren suing all those people is kind of entertaining in a way, and it keeps him in the spotlight. Frank Warren must have the mind of a lawyer at this point, because he sued so many people and he understands the law so well. Without having a law degree himself, he's probably the next best thing. At least in a boxing context, you know? This guy knows so much about the law, so much about contracts and whatnot. Because Frank Warren has won most of his lawsuits, right? Mr. Lucas says, I thought Bricktop did work in law previously. Not to my knowledge, no. Yeah, somebody said there, Bob Arum is a former lawyer. Bob Arum worked as a lawyer at a very high level. I think he worked for the US government at one point as a lawyer. Wasn't he like a district attorney or something? Or a very high up lawyer, Bob Arum, before he got into boxing. But no, I'm not aware of Bricktop having any kind of legal background at all. Bricktop's background was in unlicensed boxing through his cousin Lenny McLean. So Bricktop was, you know, a hustler from Islington, back when Islington was a bit rough. And he was like a hustler, you know? Okay, Mr. Classic Metal says, Warren is the son of a bookmaker. He trained as a solicitor's clerk with J. Tickle and Co. on Southampton Row in London. Okay. So he trained as a solicitor's clerk. So he wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't trained as a lawyer, but trained as a solicitor's clerk. So somebody that would help out solicitors when he was very young. All right. No, Big Baby Miller never messaged me. He just left a comment on a video. Tony says Frank Warren would get a master's in law without even attending the lectures. He knows so much at this point. It's like a guy who used to drive at 14 and passes his driving test after one lesson. That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy. King James says, would love to see footage of Frank in the dock shoulder rolling the questions. That's right, Kyler, yes. Barry Hearn made money on the fruit machines back in the late 70s. These guys were hustlers, although Barry Hearn is a legitimate accountant. That was his background. He went to university and all that and studied accountancy and became a chartered accountant. So that's Barry Hearn's actual background. He wasn't any kind of like helper for accountants or a clerk like Bricktop apparently was for lawyers. No, he was an actual accountant. And that's the way he runs his business. Like an accountant. Aaron says, so Tyson isn't being promoted by Frank against Makhmudov. No, he isn't. He might be taking a cut if he still has a contract with Partridge, but he isn't involved in the promotion of that show whatsoever in any way. That's right, Joshua Hooker. Frank and Barry knew each other from the fruit machine days, yes. People say they like Frank Warren's face in the thumbnail. I do try and find screenshots or pictures where the face is going to get an instant reaction. So I do search for certain facial expressions and all that kind of stuff to put in a thumbnail. And this is an example of it. Yes, Jake Jones, still live. Charles B says, the one you put up of Dubois was funny. Yeah, getting funny ones of Dubois is quite easy, because most of the time he looks off-key. Callis Sowland is also a gold mine. He's a treasure trove for thumbnails. Any of you guys remember the recent Callis Sowland one? Could I get that up? Let me have a look. That was one of my recent favorites that I did, the Callis Sowland thumbnail. I think it was for the announcement of Wilder Chisora. Where's he at? Where is that Callis thumbnail that I did? Searching the thumbnail for... My thumbnail folder is so big at this point. It's like literally gigabytes worth of thumbnails now. Yeah, there it is. You guys remember this one? What is up with Kala Sauerland, by the way? Is Kala Sauerland actually on the marching powder, or is he just weird like that? Or both? Some people are saying both. Big up Charles B for the super chat. He says, just finishing up in the gym. Hopefully you're still live when I get back. If not, I'll have to catch the replay. Big up Charles B every time. What do you think, Charles B? Is Kala Sauerland on the marching powder, or is he just weird like that? Or both? Most people are saying both. The box says a heavy DRUG user. Okay, Gutter Dandy is claiming, and I have no knowledge of this. I don't want to catch any kind of lawsuit here. He's claiming that he was on the marching powder and was in rehab, so I heard. I think he's relapsed a few times since, all right? No knowledge of that. Cannot verify that, but there you go. Shout out to Gutter Dandy. And my favorite Sauerland picture of all time, let me see if I can find it. Do I have it here somewhere? Is it this one? I don't think it's this one, but it's similar to this one. It's similar to the one I'm about to show you. But there's another one which is even more wild than this, which makes it look like Sauerland's got a coat hanger in his mouth. Like it's some type of character from The Simpsons. Look at Kala's face here. Folks, that's not normal. That's not normal. Yeah, that's not the one I'm looking for. There is another one where he looks even more manic than that. I seem to not have it here somehow. Try this folder. Maybe I'll do a quick search online, see if I can find it that way, because I can't be the only person that's got that picture or has had that picture. 1 second. What do I even search for? Kala Sauerland weird face? Is that what I search for? Yeah, there's the one. I found it. Somebody is amusingly put a Coca-Cola symbol next to the picture. I'll use the one without the Coca-Cola symbol. Coca-Cola logo, should I say. Look at this one here. How do you end up looking like that? Any explanations here? How'd you end up looking like that? Someone says too much Red Bull. Is that what it is? Is that what Red Bull does to you? I don't know. Or Monster drink. There you go. Must be the Monster drink. Someone says those pupils tell you everything you need to know. Rem says he's excited to be on stage with his favorite boxers. Yeah, that's all it is. That's all it is. He's just an enthusiastic boxing fan. Chainsaw says can't handle his black coffees. He's an interesting character. And you know what? I have to rate Sauerland from a business perspective because German boxing collapsed and there was basically no space for the Sauerlands in UK boxing. So he pivoted and became a Misfits promoter. Now, some people might mock him over that, but at the end of the day, he's keeping his business afloat. Those Misfits shows, as I understand it, are very profitable. And now Misfits are moving into real boxing again. They've signed Vidal Riley and whatnot. So I think the Sauerlands have done fairly well to pivot, duck and dive, maneuver, keep themselves afloat, and maybe pave the way for a comeback. German boxing collapsed because the Klitschko's retired. In a nutshell. I mean, maybe it was going downhill a little bit before the Klitschko's retired, but that's basically what it was. The Klitschko's were propping it up. And in the absence of any, equivalent German talent after they retired, it had to collapse. A lot of the Eastern European fighters who used to be based in Germany, like Golovkin, they all split and went to America. The good ones. So, the Klitschko's were keeping it all afloat. Four Fox says Riley versus Masternak is an IBF eliminator. Is that right? What happened to that overly emotional Nigerian kid? What's his name again? Alois Jr. What happened to him? There was all that talk about him fighting Vidal Riley and it all came to nothing. Alois was a very vocal character and talking about he's going to do this, that, and the other, and now he's just gone missing. What happened to him? He went the distance with Ellis Zorro, didn't he? And he had a hard fight against Zorro. Has he gone missing because Pat Brown has now come on the scene? Oh, for real? I thought Alois was Nigerian. He's Cameroonian, is he? You sure he's not like half Nigerian, half Cameroonian, or is he just fully Cameroonian? I swear he was Nigerian. Because doesn't Alois mean something in Yoruba? Isn't it a Yoruba word? Maybe I've misremembered, but I could have sworn he was at least part Nigerian. Dr. Wu says he's running the streets of Penge. Jake Jones says people are saying he popped. Again, I've got no knowledge of that. Shout out to Adam Fawkes for the super chat. He says, do you think Benavidez' chances significantly decrease if he can't physically overpower Zerdo? That's a good question. I think his chances decrease, but I want to say not significantly. The speed difference between Zerdo and Benavidez is absolutely vast, okay? I mean, Benavidez is so quick in terms of hand speed compared to Zerdo. Zerdo's a guy that really relies on his technique and his toughness, because he is a good boxer, he is technically sound, but he's slow. He's not an athlete. Benavidez doesn't have amazingly quick feet. He's not that nimble around the ring, but his hand speed is very, very good. And he's very creative on the offensive. People just see him throwing a load of punches, but they're not really seeing the way he's setting up the shots. You know, he's clever. The way he opens you up. His punch sequences are unusual. He tricks you and stuff like that. So if he can't bully Ramirez, I do think it lessens his chances to some extent. But yeah, I want to say not significantly. I still think he beats Ramirez regardless. I'm picking Benavidez in the fight. But what do you think? Bear in mind, both of these guys started out at 168. Now they've moved all the way up to cruiser, so it's an even fight in that sense. And both guys are massive for even light heavyweight. Okay, Zerdo's been at cruiser for quite a while now, so maybe he's more accustomed to fighting the bigger guys. But obviously Benavidez is not like exactly like Bivol, but he does have the hand speed similar to Bivol. And Bivol, despite not being a puncher, overwhelmed Zerdo Ramirez when they fought. I expected that fight to be somewhat competitive, but it was totally one-sided. Ramirez just could not deal with the speed that the shots were coming in at. And also, you know, the foot speed of Bivol to be able to get away, you know, jump in and out, deliver a combination, then jump out and avoid counters. Benavidez doesn't have that kind of foot speed. But again, I do expect the hand speed at times to overwhelm Ramirez. So, why am I saying Ramirez? Benavidez, excuse me. No, Ramirez. What am I talking about? Ramirez. Look at me getting my Spanish names mixed up. Ramirez. Brittany Galloway says Zerdo also has a rock-solid chin. Yeah, he's got an iron jaw. That's a whole fact. Zerdo's got a great chin. But I do think the speed and the creativity of Benavidez is going to be too much for him. The hand speed. Oh yeah, completely agree, Adam Fawkes. Benavidez. Okay, no, excuse me. You're saying that footwork will be a big question. You don't think Benavidez has that in and out bounce that Bivol had? Yeah, I completely agree with that. Benavidez doesn't have the in and out bounce of Bivol. So I don't think it will be as one-sided as the Bivol fight. I'm certainly not expecting that. But I do think just the hand speed alone from Benavidez and a very creative offense will be enough for him to get it done, personally. But we'll see. It's a good fight. Shout out to Jake Jones. He says, Hatman, what do you think of Fury fanboys saying Peter Fury has the game plan with his kickboxer to beat Usyk because he was the one who masterminded the Vlad win? From what I hear, This Verhoeven, however you want to pronounce his name, he's competent as far as boxing. But it would take a lot more than Peter Fury in his corner for him to get a win over Alexander Usyk. It would take Usyk taking his eye off the ball in a major way, aging badly overnight. But then you think Verhoeven is not a young guy himself. What is he, 36? A lot of wear and tear from kickboxing. So, I don't see it. I think Usyk can beat a guy like this in his sleep. Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? 404 Vibes Not Found. AJ apparently moving to Dubai amidst all of this chaos that's going on over there. Most people are trying to get out. He's trying to get in. At least as a resident, he won't necessarily be living there, but I'm not sure how it works over there now. It's a little different to when I lived there many years ago. But yeah, trying to escape the tax. A lot of people do that because the tax is crazy in the United Kingdom. Nobody wants to pay all that tax. But there are other places, other tax havens in the world that you can go. You don't have to go somewhere which is, you know, under siege. So it's a curious choice for AJ to do that now, isn't it? It's a curious choice. But indeed, you know, property prices are plummeting there. Rents are coming down for obvious reasons. Maybe he sees an opportunity or something. I don't know. Maybe he sees some kind of opportunity. And there are opportunities if you're willing to take the risk. But how much is your life worth, you know? There's opportunities for everyone over there now. Yeah, it's getting a whole lot cheaper very quickly, isn't it? But how much is your life worth? Yeah, so many boxers are moving there because there's no income tax. So it's the thing to do among boxers now is to go out and become a resident over there, tax-free. You virtually doubled your income overnight. So Fight Sport Talk and Rye Bread are debating Verhoeven. I don't know anything about him. I can't join the debate. I'm sure you two know far more about him than I do. But from what I've seen and from what I've heard, I give him very, very little chance against Alexander Usyk, even on a bad day. If he was a puncher, I'd give him a better chance. But the fact he's got such a low KO ratio, even in his own sport, that doesn't bode well. Vibes Not Found says, don't you think AJ could live in Nigeria for the same reason? Well, Nigeria is far more dangerous. Well, actually, saying that, you know, Dubai's become dangerous all of a sudden, hasn't it? But the tax situation in Nigeria has tax. So you're not going to escape income tax in Nigeria. And Nigeria is so fantastically corrupt. I know AJ's a hero over there and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know the lay of the land over there, how he's able to move around and, you know, how much the corruption affects him. I don't know, man, but Nigeria is such a fantastically corrupt country. It's very technical moving over there as any kind of person, but even more so as a rich person. You got to know the right people, and just seems very complicated to me. It's not a place I'd move. I mean, if I had a load of money, I wouldn't want to move to Nigeria. Much better off here in certain parts of Southern Africa. It's a lot more laid back, safer. Nigeria is crazy. All right, big up Pickney boy. Yeah, you know, one of the things that you find in many African countries is, how can I describe it? So, for example, where I live, you talk to most of the locals, and they will tell you that getting a job is damn near impossible unless you know someone. So it's not like in the West where you can just go for any job with an application form and your CV or your resume, as they call it in the States, and get that job. Here, trying to do it that way as a local, at least, if you're a foreigner, you're much more likely to be hired. They just assume that foreigners from the West are just going to be better at the jobs. But for the locals, if you don't know someone, from what I'm told by everybody, it's damn near impossible to get a job doing anything. Which is why there are so many, and this is the case throughout a lot of Africa. This weird thing where there's all this nepotism, and you have to know, is it right to even call it nepotism? Because isn't nepotism when you're related to the person? But either way, there's this weird thing where you have to know someone, and that's why there's so much entrepreneurship in Africa, where people find it difficult to get jobs because it's jobs for the mates and friends and all that kind of stuff in all of these companies. So people just set out to start their own businesses. Africa is the land of entrepreneurship. Yeah, people are big time hustlers here. Getting into any kind of business, any which way they can, they're going to find a way to make money. You often not working for someone else. In fact, if I had to guess, I'd say most people here, if not most, then a very large minority are self-employed somehow, rather than working for someone. And if they are working for someone, it'll be a family member or a friend, stuff like that. So it's a very different kind of scenario. Pickney Boy says, Frank Warren reminds me of a lizard. You know who really reminds me of a lizard? Is Dana White. Dana White is always flicking his tongue like some kind of member of Slytherin house. Like a Death Eater. Haven't you guys noticed that? Dana White's always flicking his tongue. Like that character from Harry Potter. Anyone else noticed it? I think Dana White's a lizard. You're certainly cold-blooded. There you go. Warren is more like a deep-sea fish. I agree with that. Warren is like one of those fish. You know, in the UK anyway, you go to the pet shop or wherever where they sell fish. You know those ugly, bug-eyed fish? They're often black, but sometimes they come in orange. I don't know what species of fish that is. They've got these big bulbous eyes. That's Frank Warren. Barty Crouch. There you go. Barty Crouch. So AJ says in that thumbnail, Bricktop looks like that bald guy who interviews scummy ex-cons and people like that. Fraud Dougie the ballerina Joyce. Yeah, I've always found that world to be kind of strange. You know, the true crime podcasts and all that stuff, which, you know, I've watched the odd episode here and there, but the issue I have with all that true crime stuff is that you're dealing with a bunch of career criminals. And they're all trying to like outdo each other as far as credibility. Oh, this one's not credible, that one's not credible. Anyone who just puts blind faith in any ex-career criminal is a damn fool. Bro, they're all liars. So when they're throwing all these accusations against each other and, oh no, I'm siding with this one over that one, it's like, come on now. There's no honor amongst thieves. Some people get obsessed with those true crime podcasts and following all these ex-cons and stuff like that, which I do find a little weird. The box says, why don't I believe Hearn's amateur credentials? Well, you know, he did it under an assumed name and said, oh, well, I didn't want people to have a go at me for being Barry's son in case I lost. I just find it very dubious. It's a nice little bit of mythology, isn't it, for Matchroom? That Eddie had a few amateur bouts. AJ says they're all faker than designer gear from Turkey. Yeah, it's like a lot of the followers of those true crime podcasts seem to completely be oblivious to the fact that these people who they're watching are professionals at dishonesty. If you're a career criminal, you have to become a great liar. If you're going to be a successful career criminal, you need to be lying just constantly. Not only to the police, obviously, and to judges, but lying to everyone, because what you're doing is illegal. You're trying to cover it up. Lying to competitors, lying to your own workers and own compadres. I mean, you're going to become an expert at lying. And it's pretty much standard practice with those ex-cons to embellish their stories, exaggerate their stories and all that kind of... The vast majority of them do it. And then they accuse others of doing it when they're doing the very same thing. It's like, yeah, so... Big up Rye Bread. If we can get 3 more likes on this stream, that'll be much appreciated. 203 concurrent viewers, only 97 likes. Let's get it up to 100. Let's break that ton. So I was watching a video last night, actually. There was a historian talking about Genghis Khan for about an hour. It's pretty interesting. And he was highlighting the way that the Mongols, here's me pivoting again away from boxing, the Mongols were obviously very good in warfare. They were fantastic warriors, but they weren't particularly good at anything else. And I'm sure in the series Game of Thrones, the Dothraki were based on the Mongols. They didn't look phenotypically that much like Mongols, but I'm pretty sure that's what they were partly based on. That's what the Dothraki are like in Game of Thrones. They're good at warfare, but not much else. But yeah, the Mongols were, no transferable skills. That's a good way to put it. No transferable skills. Yeah, that one I do believe as well, Star Fox. I do believe all Littleman's window stories. Yeah, they posted Littleman through the letterbox. Never mind just pushing him through a small window to get into a house and burglarize it. They posted him through the letterbox. Yes, indeed, they did do that. Yeah, that's right. They used to incorporate specialists from the places they conquered, like Chinese engineers. And yeah, they did that, yeah. But they themselves were apparently good at not much other than fighting. They were ruthless. Don't want to say fearless, but, ferocious. I've been meaning to get round to playing this video game. It's several years old now. Why have I forgotten the name of it? It came out, I think, on PS4, but they remastered it for PS5. And did they remaster it or just do... I don't know. What's that Japanese open world game which is based upon the invasion by the Mongols? What's it called now? Forget the name of it. I've only played about an hour of it, but I keep meaning to eventually get into that game. What's that game called? Came out quite a few years ago now. Thank you, Sean. Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah. That's based around, I think, some type of historical reality where the Mongols invaded or tried to invade Japan. Yeah, they've done a second one. That's right. That's called Ghost of something else, isn't it? How many kids did Genghis Khan have? Because there's always this claim that a certain percentage of the world's population are like descendants of Genghis Khan. How many kids did he have? He must have had a hell of a lot of kids for that to be true. So Pat says, excellent game. The follow-up is Ghost of Yotai. Is it Yotai or Yotei? Chris Lee says, not as many as Steen, it seems. Yeah, some of that stuff in the Steen files is so weird. Yotai, okay, that's how you pronounce it. Now, I heard, I don't know whether this is true, but this is a claim that some people are putting out there online, that Steen apparently had some of his DNA put into the Jabberwockies. Obviously, Jabberwocky is a euphemism for something, folks. You know, figure it out. There's people claiming that he had his DNA put into the Jabberwockies. So the idea is, by having his DNA in the Jabberwockies, he symbolically, if not literally, impregnated most of the world's population. Yo. Patrick says, by the way, the Mongol Empire was short-lived. Yeah, as I was saying earlier on, most of the largest empires in world history are relatively short-lived, because they spread themselves too thin. You know, even the British Empire was short-lived, right? Didn't last that long. Because you just spread yourself too thin. Spread yourself too thin. And the Mongol Empire, as far as I'm aware, is the largest continuous empire, as in a continuous landmass. The British Empire was bigger overall, but it was, you know, not all one continuous empire. It was like piecemeal, you know? Whereas the Mongol Empire was like one huge area that spanned across Asia and into parts of Europe and stuff like that. All right, folks, I'm going to shut this stream down. I'm going to go off now and nurse my injured toe, which has been steadily swelling throughout the course of this live stream. So, yeah, I'm going to go find something for this injured toe. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation. It's been great chopping up with you guys as always. And I'd like to give a special shout out to those who donated via Super Chat. Just give me a moment to get their names up here. They were Mr. Luca, Matt Borgerson, Mr. Classic Metal, President Brush, Cartledge, Charles B, and Adam Folks. Big up, much appreciated. And shout out to everyone else who joined the conversation. Until next time, take care, be good. I'll catch you on the other side. I'm out.